you get the job. You're a manager, a leader, and you think from here on it's going to be smooth sailing, right? Wrong. There's always going to be a crisis, a change that you're going to have to manage. And without the right tools, it's very hard to do. Today in the podcast, we're going to talk about leading teams through change. So don't go anywhere. Welcome to today's episode. And we have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Katherine Robinette, and she uses her 20 plus years of marketing expertise to help companies drive intentional change, improve the employee experience, build skill teams, and enhance communication. She's known for her clarity, humor, and empathy. Katherine helps mid-level leaders, managers of teams and departments, and HR professionals shed the armor, overcome resistance, and create a workplace where everyone thrives. Welcome to the show, Katherine.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited also because, first of all, I love the title of your keynote, which I know from a group we were together. And I think this is so needed because so many people, I have done it in the past, put this armor, this fortress that we create around us to protect ourselves, but we don't understand how much impact this has, ripple effect in our teams. And so very excited to talk about this. But before we get there, I always like to start the episode letting the audience know a little bit about you because they know everything about me. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what made you decide to take this lane and be passionate about this topic?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I have about 20 years of experience doing marketing and business development in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. Tough nut. Tough nut to crack. And what I realized is that the same tools that we use to vet clients and do market research and figure out hot buttons are all the same tools that we should be using internally for employee engagement and company culture. So, what do your employees want? What would make them stay? Why is there a disconnect between what they say and what they do? Like all of that is the exact same tools. We just turn them inside the organization. And so towards the end of my in-house career, that's what I was doing. I was doing some employee engagement work and assessments and studies and stuff, and using all of the analytical tools that I had in my tool belt to really help the company like figure out what people needed and wanted to stay. And then when I went into the consulting world, I did a little bit of both still. Teaching business development skills and how to read clients, and also helping organizations manage change, usually big strategic initiatives for their company or departmental restructure and reorganization, but large change initiatives that they've were basically said, you need to do this. And the managers went, we have to what now? How do we make that happen? So that's, they would call me.
It as someone who's been there, right, leading people in the trenches, and this is why I started the episode like this. It's like, oh, I made it. Now it's gonna be like easy peasy from here on, and that's when I'm gonna say it. Shit hits the fan.
Yeah, it
Uh,
gets tough.
I always say I love this is my podcast because I can say whatever I want.
Yeah, right.
There's no censorship. But it and especially now, like the time we are recording this podcast is where the LA wildfires are happening, and I hope people just, besides being compassionate about what's happening there, understand that disasters happen, change is coming, the storm is inevitable, it will happen. And how prepared are you as a manager to deal with the world? Because yes, employee first, caring for your people, I believe is the most important thing. And you have a fiduciary responsibility with your company. And so I think this is where your framework, your expertise comes very handy, because it's like, okay, we have this thing that we have to go through. How do we do it?
Yeah. And you hit on a couple of really interesting dichotomies in that we tend to promote people to manager and leadership positions who were really good at doing the job.
Hmm.
And now their job is to manage people who are doing the job.
Yeah. Yes.
Not do the job anymore, but be a manager for which they may or may not have training or support or the intuitive natural skills to do very well. So now let's throw in a crisis or not a crisis, a strategic initiative that we are asking these people to implement, and they don't have the basic structure foundation to support doing that thing. And then never mind if their team is under stress because they're overworked or they're dealing with LA fires or whatever. Yeah, it gets. I think it's juicy.
It is really juicy because with my work, what I have realized is that it really starts with self awareness. And I
Yeah.
think your shedding the armor is part of that because when you are put as yourself on this position, especially if this is your first time as a manager, especially if you just got promoted from being the best at what you do to now have to manage others to do something that you were
Hmm.
so good at, all your insecurities come to the surface because you don't know how to deal with the fear of failure, with ego, because the outcome is going to be attached to you, and all those things. And that's what I think you put that armor on because it's like, it can affect me. I have to pretend not care, or I don't want to actually speak for you. Why don't you tell us about what is all this armor that people put on?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so my keynote that we keep referring to is called "Shed the Armor,"
Mhm.
making epic change without the battle, and
Love it.
it's really a mind shift, right?
Mhm.
We tend to go into these situations feeling like it's a battle. We get an us-them mentality, or worse, we just
Us
kind of
versus them.
yeah, like the leadership is telling me I have to do this and I'm one of the people and I'm resisting making that change. Or I am the leadership. I really want this change, but I know my people are going to hate it. It's like, well, how do you know that? Like you
Yeah,
don't and odds are they're not all going to hate it and you can in fact turn that around if you do the right things. And
yeah,
that's what the speech goes through. It's called my table framework because it's not about armoring up for battle. It's about bringing everyone to the same table,
yeah,
and just laying everything out. In my experience, change initiatives have about 5 steps, and things go awry when you skip a step.
yeah,
So if you don't even know that, if you don't even know you have to go through these steps, you're already at a deficit uh, and facing a challenge. And so, of course, you want to protect yourself and you armor up.
yeah,
And it can be for a whole bunch of reasons: fear of
yeah,
failure, your reputation is on the line. If you're a highly driven individual, you want the accomplishment without the agony. If you're an amiable personality, you want people to love you while you're doing this thing that you're worried that they're going to hate, right? If you're analytical mindset, you want to make sure everything's right before you take that first step. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of different pieces of armor that you put on to protect yourself from this thing. And really, the thing is unknown. That's
yeah,
what everybody's armoring up against is, I don't know. Well, okay. So let's take away some of the mystery, control what you can control, and build in times to find out what you don't know
yes.
so that it's not a mystery anymore. And then you don't need the armor.
And you know what? Confidence, I always say confidence comes from competence, right? When you actually prepare for
Yeah.
the battle,
Yep. Yeah.
your odds of winning are exponentially higher.
Yeah. And yeah, which is not to say, like, I talk to people, you and I do public speaking all the time. And if I don't have some butterflies before I
Yeah,
go on stage, it's going to be a bomb. It's
yeah,
just going to bomb.
yeah,
So I'm not saying don't prepare. I'm saying it doesn't have to be a battle.
yeah,
And your attitude about it as the leader or the person who's responsible for initiating the change or implementing the change, your attitude about it is going to dramatically affect how other people perceive the initiative.
Absolutely. So, Catherine, are you going to share with us some some of the steps?
Some of the framework. Yeah, 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 yeah. I always talk about the first one because it's the one that we tend to skip over
Mhm,
because we think we know the answer. And the first
mhm,
one is target your goals. And what I mean by that is get crystal clarity about what the desired outcome
mhm,
is. Are
mhm,
you after a change in behavior? Are you after a specific financial target? Are you after um, I don't know, a market share shift, right? Be crystal clear about what that is and what that looks like and what would fundamentally change about the day-to-day experience when you've achieved that goal. If
mhm.
you can't describe it, you can't achieve it,
That's right. Yes.
right?
This is like me in my personal life. I always said, if I can visualize what I want, it's done.
Yeah, pretty
When
much.
I'm usually watching about, well, I don't know what it looks like in my head, then it never, because it's too ambiguous to like put all your effort into it. And if you as a leader don't know what it is that you're going after, how are you going to tell your people? How are you going to communicate down the vision?
Yeah, yeah, because you want them to be hardwired to find solutions towards that goal.
Yeah.
So, and you'll notice that I'm talking about goals, objectives, what do you want to achieve? I am not talking about what is the problem that we are trying to solve, which is historically where we tend to start all
Right.
of our change initiatives. Is what is
Right.
the problem we're trying to solve? And I'm learning that when we focus on that, we come up with a million different solutions to the
Mm-hmm.
problem.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
we focus on this is what we want to achieve, you really only end up with one or two choices to get you there.
That's a mind shift right there.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
because
it's
we're all so good at problem solving.
yes.
This is
Yes.
how you get really onerous processes. Is
Yes.
because somebody said, "We need to make sure that this thing never happens again."
And
It's
maybe
like,
what you need to do is not continue on that path, but take a whole different route.
yeah, that's exactly right.
And then
Maybe
you
what
are
you
like,
really
well, let
want
me pick up
is
the debris, let me pick up that tree, let me move the snow. So I'm looking at the snow outside. But
yeah,
maybe the solution was just to fly, not to drive.
precisely, precisely. So if you can really articulate as, okay, but what do we want this to look like, feel like, act like? What is different at the end of this?
Hmm.
Not what was the chaos that started this conversation, but
Yeah.
what do we want to end with? You will come up with a very clear path on how to
Mm.
get there. It may not be the best path, and you'll figure and I build it into my framework. It's at times to go, okay, wait a minute, is this doing what I wanted it to do?
Checking in. Yes. Hmm.
Yep, yep, a little assessments and moments of adjustment. But yeah, you have to. That's the first step. If you cannot have the group completely understand, and I don't mean use the same words because you and I have both experienced where a team will say, yeah, 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 we're going to do X. We're going to get to X. And X meant something different for everybody on the team. You have to have the same vocabulary, you have to have the same picture in your head. If you're a visual group, you all have to completely understand what is this going to change at the end?
Yeah.
Are we
Well, and then
acting
I think
different?
this is where
Whatever.
communication comes into place. A lot of people think communication is talking down, and I don't mean in a despective way, but
Yeah.
like one way communication. I
Yeah.
have a story. So when I don't know, 15 years ago, I took a
Oh,
job.
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I took a job. It was a lateral move, but I was going to work for a very, very respected C-level person in the company that my gut was telling me it was the right thing to do. People that I work with in other departments told me I was crazy, but I always follow my intuition. So I went and spoke with someone who's worked for this person. And I said, and he had been very successful under her. And I said, what is the secret to success? And what he told me was mind blowing. He said, communication. She's going to ask you for A. You're going to think she asked you for C, but really the answer was W. And that's exactly the words he used. And I'm like, got it. So the first 6 months in the job, every time she asked me for something, I with my words, with my understanding, I said, okay, to be clear, this is what you asked me for. And then she'll be like, no. And we will be there maybe 3, 4 times. And then when I went to work, there wasn't ambiguous, like we were on sync, right? Within 6 months, I could read her mind. The A was the W straight.
Yeah.
And that position actually was the catapult for me to the corner office. Just that progression.
Yeah.
And I think I find that many leaders, like, they say, hey, Katherine, can you please do this for me? Or let's do this project. And you're like, oh yeah. And then you go off and then you come back. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, but you asked me to do that. No, that's not what I asked you, right? I
Right.
mean,
We talk about clarity of expectations all the time. It's like,
yeah,
I thought I was being clear. It's like, well,
yeah.
and there was their first problem. What the other interesting piece about uh, leadership is that the higher up in the org chart you are, the more information you have, or the more information you have access to. And so it's hard to understand why people are reacting the way that they're reacting. 9 times out of 10, it's because they don't have the information that you do in your head. And you, because you have it so readily, don't even think about, oh, yeah, they don't know X, Y, and Z. They don't know that this other thing, this other conversation is happening in the background and that everything's going to end up being fine. Right? We don't make that connection. It would be, I mean, there's a reason the brain can only process so much information. And so it is also protecting yourself,
Yeah,
protecting you from just an information overload. But also because we don't know what other people don't know.
that's right. So what, in your expertise, do you have any tips for managers? Because, like a parent, I always said leadership is like parentship. I mean, you got to protect your people, but
Yep.
you have to give them the tools to succeed
Yeah.
at the same time. So I remember having information that, I mean, you cannot just go and tell people like the
So and
bad,
so's getting
the
fired.
ugly, and the horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to a certain extent. And again, once let's say you're C-level, maybe your VPs can know most of it. But then it needs to trickle, right? Because level of maturity, level of uncertainty, all that. How much can you handle?
Yeah.
Do you have
So
any tips on that?
I do, because that comes up a lot, right? It's like, well, we can't, especially like merger acquisition stuff, right? That's a huge change initiative
Hmm. Hmm.
about which you really can't share a lot of details with
Yeah.
staff. And also, you don't know what's going to happen. It could all
Hmm.
fall through,
Yeah.
or it could happen and then you don't know necessarily what's going to change first.
Yes.
However, there is always something that you can talk about, and I call it the trust acts,
Mm-hmm.
ACT, A being authority.
Hmm.
Who is making the decisions? What's the decision-making process? Is it going to be by committee? Are you breaking out certain aspects of the transition into different groups, right? Who's making up those groups? Who's leading those groups? All of that, you can talk about that.
Hmm.
You can talk about C, which is contribution. How can I get involved? How can I give you feedback?
Hmm.
What if I'm scared? Who do I go to talk
Hmm.
to?
Hmm.
Um, is there some anonymous way to provide feedback? Because maybe
Yeah.
I don't want it coming back to me, whatever. You
Yeah.
can always talk about that. And truth. What can you actually share about
Mhm.
what's going on? Because not everything is confidential. So if you are to the stage at all where you're going to tell them, hey, this is in the works, you have already talked about the biggest thing, which is, hey, this is in the works. So there's something else you can talk about. You could talk about timeline. You can talk about what we just did, which is what's the process going to be. You can talk about, hey, we know that these are the 3 most important things on your mind right now. They're going to get handled first. Wouldn't that be a brilliant opening statement? If your staff is
Absolutely.
if your staff is worried about 3 things, then talk
Yeah.
about those 3 things. Like,
Yeah.
here's how we're
Or
going
if
to go
those things
about
are
it.
not even going to be decided a year from now,
Correct.
then
Tell
because
them that.
anxiety is one of the biggest paralyzers of progress in a company.
Yeah.
When your staff is anxious about the future, nothing gets done.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, they might be in front of the computer, but they are not being productive.
Yeah, their brain is somewhere else. Their brain
Yeah.
is like, "Is this job even gonna exist when
Yeah.
this is all over?"
So they might be in the computer looking at LinkedIn. Where can I go?
Uh-huh.
Where maybe that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you can again, this is where being a leader and having more information can be a barrier, can be a piece of armor
Mhm.
to actually trying to identify what your staff might be concerned about. I advocate like there's there's always somebody on staff who is that leader without a title,
Mhm.
the person that everybody else goes to for advice or for
Yeah.
comfort or to find
Yeah.
out what's really going on.
Yeah.
If leadership taps into that one person or handful of people and says, "Hey, this is what's going on. We need you to be confidential about
Yeah.
this, but we need to ask you, what do you think is what's the first thing that popped into your head?" If you can address the first thing that pops into that person's head when you do your first communication about the project, chef's kiss. You will be 10 steps ahead of everybody else on all of their change initiatives because you will
I
be
actually love
addressing the
that. Yeah.
you'll be addressing the number one concern of 90% of your staff.
Yeah. And so now we're talking about, when there's something like big, major, scary happening, but like
Right.
I, in a different way, have utilized in a good way that on untitled leader in a team. I remember one time I had this project. It was one of those things like, why are we even doing this
Yeah.
thing? I took it. I actually took the project. It was a gamble. If I can make it, it was gonna be amazing. If I fail, I was gonna be out the door. And I remember my peers were like, "This is a suicidal mission." I'm like, "I know," but I needed help from people that I didn't have influence over because I have never worked with them. So I didn't have,
Yep.
respect or any of the things that you can earn as a leader. But I identified one person who was one of those untitled leaders. And I was able, it took me a long time, by the way, it didn't happen in 15 minutes, but I was able to inspire him to to toggle with me in this project, and that was it because he
Yeah.
was able to talk to the people and convince and inspire the other ones. So again, how are you doing to communicate? And this was a change, right? It was something that we needed to do. And I could have said like, "Oh, I have all the answers. I know how to do it. I have the title, I have the hammer." I couldn't, right? Like the awareness to know is like, I need other people in the team to help me do it.
Yeah. And that's part of what's the outcome, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I always start there. Target your goals because you need to, once you've figured out, oh, this is what we want in the end, then it becomes pretty clear. Well, then we need to make sure we have Jerry on board, or
Yeah.
whatever. these
Yeah.
these are these are the stakeholders.
How do you know the
Or
name? No, that's kidding.
yeah, or we need to, uh, you, if you can visualize this is what we want to have changed or different at the end of this journey, you can also figure out who's going to provide the most resistance or who's going to be the most excited about that change. Well, those are the people you need to get involved or mitigate their influence,
Yeah.
right? If they're a potential saboteur, then you want to, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Those
And
are,
there's different levels of influence, right? There's the owner of the project, the decision maker, ultimate decider, the person who's going to sign the check, whatever. There's the manager who may be the face and the person that's dealing with the questions and actually moving the ball forward. There are the influencers, positive and negative, right? The people who just need to weigh in and then they fly away, and the contributors, the actual hands-on implementation people who are going to be doing the hard work and writing the communication plans and whatever. Um, they all need different handling.
Yes. Yes.
But if you don't know that, again, going in, you
Then
can't
you go
give.
treat everyone like they like vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, and any one individual, it has nothing to do with their title. Any one individual is going to be an owner, manager, influencer, or contributor, depending on their interaction with that particular topic or change initiative.
Yeah.
I love working with the smaller groups because what happens is when a team decides we're going to do this thing and they go through the process and then they have success, now you have a group of early adopters
Hmm.
for a process that worked for them. And everybody else is going to look to that team and go, how did you do that? Right? Because it's so much easier to affect change on a small scale
Hmm. Hmm.
with a core group of people than it is on a gigantic scale with a large organization.
Yeah.
So why not? I mean, everybody says change happens from the top down. It's like I don't think so. I think it happens from a core group of people who are having success with whatever their system is. And when people, and if they're having fun doing it, if they genuinely care about each other and they're laughing and having a good time, that will get more attention than any change initiative that the leadership says we have to do X, and the get the zap of the finger.
Yeah.
Laughter is going to win over every single time. So
Well, you spend so much time at work, you better have fun.
you
Other,
better have a good time, right? And
yeah.
so part of this process is, okay, so what are those milestones? Because you need to have, not only do you need to be able to track your progress and figure out, like, okay, we've arrived at this step, you also need reasons to celebrate.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And Catherine, I mean, I think we can talk for hours about this topic. We
Okay.
obviously both have gone through it, have lead people through it, have seen the good, the bad, the ugly, the success, and the maybe learning opportunities. What is like one last thought you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important mind shift that people need is to understand that they can absolutely do this.
Mhm.
And it does not matter what title they have.
Mhm.
If they have any influence over the people around them, even just as the best friend in the office,
Yeah,
they can absolutely influence change for the better.
I love it. Change doesn't have to be painful.
Yeah, it's not a battle.
Yeah. So, where can people find you?
You can find me at keystoneandraven.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as Katherine Robinette speaker.
So, guys, you already have tasted a little bit of Catherine. She's funny, she's witty, and obviously full of expertise. So, make sure you follow her in LinkedIn and check out her website. And Catherine, thank you so much for coming to the show today. It's been a pleasure
Thank you.
to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Have a
And you guys,
great year.
yeah. Oh, yes. And until next time, don't forget to lead intentionally. Bye bye.